Hello guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to be talking about Google and more specifically why Google stock is moving the way it is today. It is currently up 9% on the day. And as mentioned before, Google is one of my biggest holdings. So I am very happy and I feel like a lot of my efforts are being rewarded right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I recently made another video about the top three stocks that I own currently, and Google's one of the top three. And I had mentioned how I thought that the sentiment around Google is really low and that people are extremely afraid of Google and they fear ChatGPT and these large language models as competitors for Google. And that Google is like really cheap relative to the other Mag 7 companies. So I thought Google was a good value to buy. And I've been buying it for a while now, I think. I started buying it around April, and slowly and surely it's been going up since April. And besides the competition fear that people had with ChatGPT and other LLMs, there was one other thing that was keeping the sentiment really negative around Google, and that was the Department of Justice had uh, a court ruling against Google where they were essentially looking into Google and them having a monopoly of the search market share, right? Because Google owns Google Chrome, obviously, well, their own Alphabet technically, but they were essentially saying that Google has a monopoly and they can protect their monopoly by paying services such as Apple to make Google the default search engine. And since Google has a lot more money than their competitors, they can just keep everyone out of the game, right? This is what the argument was against Google, and they were essentially threatening to make Google sell Chrome to someone else, right? And this was causing investors to be really scared as there was uncertainty around Google, hence why Google was so cheap for so long, along with its competition fears of ChatGPT. Yesterday, September 2nd, the Department of Justice finally came out with their decision, and they decided not to make Google sell Chrome to another competitor. So Google gets to keep Chrome, and this is honestly the best possible news for the company. This is why it's jumping roughly almost 10% in one day, and I'll attach a screenshot of that right here. And it's pretty crazy to think about that how big of an impact this had on the stock price over one day. And Google has been on a positive trend since April. A lot of companies have since the tariffs, kind of the initial shock of the tariffs has calmed down. Um, but this is again, even with this 10% shock that we see, this upside that Google has experienced, I still see a lot more growth for Google going towards the end of the year. Because if we compare Google in terms of just price to earnings to other companies such as Meta, they're still way cheaper than the other companies are. And even though I've seen really amazing growth on my Google shares and Google positions that I own both in options and just regular equities, this is not a position I'm thinking of even selling or taking profits on, is I still think Google has a way to grow by the end of the year. And usually September is a bad month for the stock market. So the fact that Google's coming in so strong so early in September is a great sign for Google. And then we're still having the end of the year, which is filled with good energy and vibes. So there's probably going to be a Santa Claus rally where most of tech and the S&P 500 continues to rally upwards. And this is where I'm really excited to see how this year is going to turn out for Google, Amazon, and AMD. Those are my three biggest holdings. And I really think Google has a lot to grow because now, since there's no more reason for people to have negative sentiment towards Google, the data shows that Google search is still growing regardless of AI because Google has their own LLM model being Gemini, and that the ruling was in favor of Google. That's another reason that people they don't have any explanation why Google is a bad company anymore. They don't have any fears. So people are starting to really buy into Google. We're seeing a lot of institutional investors start purchasing Google. So I think there's going to be a lot of upside momentum towards the end of the year as Google hasn't seen that crazy of returns over the past 5 years compared to some of the other Mag 7 companies. Now, by no means, I'm not saying that you should go out of your way today to buy Google. It's not as cheap and discounted as it was a couple months ago. I'm just saying that I expect there to be a lot of movement in the Google price by the end of the year. And overall, especially with the Fed getting ready to cut rates, they were even hinting at cutting rates multiple times this year. I think the stock market has a ways to go by the end of the year. So I think we're going to see a lot of growth. Now, whether we're in an AI bubble or not, I don't know. You don't know. Who really knows? I guess time will tell. But I do believe there will be a lot of upside growth towards the end of the year because as the Fed cuts interest rates, people will have more money to spend. They'll borrow more money. So they'll be looking to get the economy pumping, and that will cause businesses to grow and equities to perform well. So I think the most important thing, regardless of whether you buy Google or not, or whatever you're buying, is to just get invested. And I really recommend to just do the S&P 500, as there's nothing safer, nothing more guaranteed. Now, I like to invest in Google because it was a company I had deep value and deep beliefs in that it was going to grow and outperform over time, and it was going to prove the so-and-so haters wrong. And so far, it's been proving me right. My thesis has been correct, and this is what I like to do. But I'm very hands-on with my money and finances. I like to check on my stocks. I like to see what news is surrounding our interest rates going down or up. What are the news on tariffs? How's that going to impact the stock market? A lot of the content I create and watch is financially driven. So I'm very hands-on with my finances. So I get entertainment from making individual stock picks. This isn't for everyone. If you're not willing to put in the same amount of energy and effort to keep up with everything, there's nothing better that you can do than just invest in the S&P 500 consistently over time, day in, day out, year in, year out, and just let it grow with time. Because even if you don't buy Google by itself, by buying the S&P 500, you're buying a piece of Apple, a piece of Amazon, a piece of Microsoft, Google, Tesla. All these amazing, wonderful companies are all in that, and you get to take part in that growth as they grow over time. So that is my advice to anyone. If you're wondering what you should be doing now with some uncertainty, some excitement, end of the year coming, is just get invested and keep investing consistently over the long run. That's how you grow your wealth and become successful in the stock market. Now, as I always say, none of this is financial advice. These are just my thoughts as a now 23-year-old, wow, that feels weird to say, who is trying to grow his wealth and be financially independent as soon as he can. So I don't have to worry about trading my time for money, and I can live the life that I want to live. And as always, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have anything that you would like me to cover or talk about, leave it in the comments. And besides that, I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.